Loved ones, friends, and community members gathering to commemorate the 58th anniversary of one of our region's greatest tragedies, the Silver Bridge collapse.
Yeah, the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant collapsed during evening rush hour on this day, 1967. Only 10 days before Christmas, 46 people died. The anniversary memorial event taking place today. Investigators later learned that an I-bar pin in the bridge had failed, sending it into the river below. The replacement bridge, which still stands to this day, was built just downriver in what is technically Henderson. They dedicated it 2 years ago to the day after the Silver Bridge tragedy. While decades have passed for families of the victims, time stands still. WSAZ's Caden Bonecutter sitting down with one of the families about the heartache they say will never fade.
Could you give us a sort of a spectator's rundown on what did happen?
I don't think anybody knows any more than I do about it, and that is nothing.
I still think about a lot of them. Nothing I do about it.
It's been 58 years since the deadliest bridge collapse in U.S. history. But for J.O. Miller, it feels like yesterday.
Everybody sat around and talked, but there wasn't nothing you could do. Just pray about it and work through it.
On December 15th, 1967, right in the middle of rush hour, the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, collapsed, killing 46 people. One of those victims was Dean Miller.
But he was a good worker, and you never heard him say a swear word.
The husband and father of 2 young boys would never return home from work that evening. He was just 27 years old.
He didn't drink, he didn't smoke. He just took care of his family. He went to work, come home.
Built in 1927, the Silver Bridge connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, and what should have been an ordinary commute ended in disaster after officials say a single fracture in an I-bar caused the suspension bridge to plummet into the cold Ohio River below. Dean's brother, J.O., had just crossed the bridge a few hours earlier.
I come across the bridge there, Point Pleasant, Gallipolis to Point Pleasant, and the bridge was shaking some when we come across the bridge.
J.O. says he didn't find out the bridge had collapsed until he got his newspaper.
The paper boy come running up on the porch and said the bridge had fell. So I jumped in the car and came back down, and I started going up and down where all the cars was to see if I could find them in one of the cars, and I couldn't find them. So I went up to the flood wall and skinned up over the flood wall and got up on top of it, and I looked and seen it was a Silver Bridge.
What J.O. would later learn, his brother Dean and 2 co-workers, Paul Scott and James Paulin, were all in the same car headed across the bridge when the collapse happened. Scott managed to get out of the car, holding onto the side of the bridge before it fell into the water. Scott, surviving the collapse, was able to relay Dean's last words to his brother J.O.
And he said, well, I want to get home. My brother said, I want to get home and see my kids.
So what apparently happened here?
Well, it's just hard to say. It just happens so quick, I don't think anyone knows.
J.O. says the shock of losing Dean in such an unexpected way still sits heavy on the family's hearts.
I'll never get over it. His wife will never get over it. I know the kids will never get over it. And he told his wife, he said, when I come home tonight, we'll decorate the tree for the kids. And he didn't make it home.
How does this look to you?
Well, you just can't describe it, that's all.
It wasn't until the day after Christmas that Dean's body was found, still inside the car in the river. J.O. says their father knew immediately that it was Dean.
He always carried a pencil in his pocket here, one of the pencils that screw the lead up and down in. And I asked my dad when he went to recognize him, when they called him, I asked him if he had that pen in his shirt. And he said that pen was still in his shirt.
While decades have passed, the community hasn't forgotten what happened that night. Each year, a memorial event is held on the anniversary. Mason County EMS Director Jeremy Bryant is this year's keynote speaker. He says it's important to keep the story alive for future generations.
You know, these families, there's families that have dealt with this now for 58 years, and they continue to deal with the aftermath, the loss. You know, there's kids that grew up without parents, there's you know, or without grandparents, or, you know, even people lost their children in this horrific event, and, you know, they're still struggling, and, you know, we just want to bring it to light and never forget what they went through.
Remembering the victims, and a night that marked a before and after point in Point Pleasant's history. Caden Bonecutter, WSAZ, Mason County.
Now, the Silver Bridge tragedy leading to the establishment of new national laws on bridge safety, keeping millions of people safe in the decades since. The Federal Aid Highway Act of 1968 established National Bridge Inspection Standards, or NBIS, and required states to maintain an inventory of their bridges. The Federal Aid Highway Act of 1970 required that all states begin inspecting their bridges in accordance with the NBIS. Now, the NBIS established what information needs to be gathered during a bridge inspection, how often bridges must be inspected, required training for bridge inspectors, as well as experience and credentials required to inspect bridges.